As founder and CEO of Canopy Studios, Anne Stefanyk helps create clarity around project needs and turns client conversations into actionable outcomes. She enjoys helping clients identify their problems and then empowering the Canopy team to execute great solutions with great websites. Anne is an advocate for open source and co-organizes the Bay Area Drupal Camp. When she's not contributing to the community or running her thoughtful web agency, she enjoys yoga, meditation, tree houses, dharma, cycling, paddleboarding, kayaking, and hanging with her nephew. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. So, Anne, explain the origin of the name Canopy Studios.
Okay, well, I grew up in Costa Rica, and I've always had a love for tree houses. Tree houses are really amazing structures in the sky and incredible works of craftsmanship and creativity that exist in the context of their surroundings. So my lifelong goal is to build a sustainable and holistic home in the plot of land I purchased in Costa Rica to build a tree house. And so in addition to building my tree house, I wanted to build a web agency upon that same foundation, really pairing creative solutions with sustainable and strong architecture while keeping the client's entire ecosystem in mind. So the name Canopy was chosen because both tree houses and websites are sustainable ecosystems under a large canopy. Both have beautiful architecture, can be simple or complex, and customizable. They really also need to accommodate constant growth and change and are limited only by creativity.
I love that. That's a really creative name, and I love the brand story. I'm very much into the book about building your story brand by Donald Miller. So that's a really beautiful brand story. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How long have you had the company?
So I ran the company first off the side of my desk for the first few years. So it officially was birthed October 2013. So about 7 years now.
Nice. Well, good luck to you, because 7 years is sort of, I think, maybe the hardest part of building a business. However, this COVID-19 is making everything more difficult for most of us. Although I think that web companies are faring pretty well. Have you done pretty well during COVID?
Well, it's interesting because the website really is the tip of the spear when it comes to a lot of marketing initiatives today. And I think due to COVID, people have really now, been enlightened to the fact that they have to take care of their website, and they need to make sure that it is really sharp and clean and concise when it comes to marketing initiatives. So we have seen an influx in client work that needs to really make sure their website. Also, with the pivot from events, marketers have a different type of, they have the money to spend on stuff this year, and it does seem to flow a little bit more onto the web these days than we expected.
Right. Yeah. So can you tell me exactly what you mean when you say that you have a holistic and sustainable agency?
Yeah. So at Canopy, we're really focusing on taking care of a website after it launches. Many agencies will build and design your site, and then they consider the project finished. It's almost like a very linear project where they start at strategy, move through design, through development, launch, and then they're done. But at Canopy, we don't see it that way because websites are never done. We believe your website should last you 10 years. And we understand that the first day you go live is actually the first day of your web project. So we've built a business that's really focused around taking care of clients for the long term. So once we launch a site, we work on improving the site so it looks better at year 2 or year 3. And when most people think you need to like tear down the site and rebuild it, we believe at year 2 or year 3, your website really should be thriving at that point. And that's really helped us build a sustainable business because we work with clients on a monthly basis. And while we do projects that are, net new and we're starting from the ground up, our specialty really is taking on work that's live and really making it better. And that really comes down to working with clients and building those long-term relationships where we can make continuous improvements over the course of a longer time and really just, show impact for our clients and for their business.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense because one of the great things about a website is that you can learn from it every day, right? You can learn how people are moving through the site and which pages they like and which pages they don't like and which pages are helping you generate leads. And so I think a website is kind of like a daily focus group that's helping you understand the movements of your targeted audience.
For sure. And we find that it's so important to kind of combine your website efforts with all of your offline efforts. And usually you end up directing folks back to your website. Whether it's, you're at an event and you're networking, you end up saying, here's my card, and eventually they'll end up at your website. So we find that when you're thinking about digital versus, traditional media and ways to kind of incorporate both, the website ultimately ends up being like the landing pad of where you send people. So if you're, doing events or you're doing other things and you're doing different campaigns, gathering data at the beginning so you can kind of see a before and after, like you said, the website becomes a gold mine for feedback on how you can better improve your services, your content, your offerings.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up that offline networking because that's really the premise of the PR Maven podcast is the importance of building a network and building a brand with both traditional and modern networking techniques. So can you talk about how you've used both in-person events and digital marketing to build the network of the Canopy agency?
Yeah, so we really believe that it's not B2B or B2C, it's really H to H. It's human to human. And whenever you're doing any type of marketing initiatives or sales initiatives, or even like us building community around our brand, we've really focused on a human-centric approach, which has been whether we do events, like we're a totally virtual company. Everybody's always worked from home. Our clients are scattered across North America. And what we've really focused on is, yes, well, we're totally virtual. We're digital first. We're web first. We've been focusing on cultivating human connection through ways, whether it is hosting events so we can get to know each other, or whether it is doing strategic outreach through LinkedIn and then scheduling kind of just meet and greets to connect with different clients. But we do find that it's so important to really listen and spend some time networking with the community with curiosity. I find if you go in, just like if you were at a conference line, you're at the lunch line, you meet the person in the front of the lunch line. You're like, hey, what are you going to have? Are you going to have salad or pasta? And you have a quick conversation about whatever is kind of around you. And then you maybe talk about business. Then you maybe share business cards. And maybe in a couple of weeks you connect and you work on an opportunity. But we find that it's connect, communicate, and then convert. And so many online situations try to just go from connect to convert, and they're missing that middle section of the communication and the connection to actually build a relationship, which then fosters trust, which then makes the whole online conversion component really easy at the end, assuming you've built a relationship built on trust and a good foundation. I'm
glad you mentioned that connect, communicate, then convert and you also mentioned LinkedIn because I don't like it when I connect with somebody on LinkedIn and immediately they're trying to sell me something. As a matter of fact, when that happens, I usually block them because that's really not the spirit of LinkedIn at all. So I think it is important when you meet someone that you do take the time to build a relationship so they do know, like, and trust you before you actually try to sell them anything. Because how else do you know what their needs are or how you might help them solve their problems?
Exactly. I don't know how many people are trying to leverage LinkedIn and they send me these in-mail conversations that are like, buy my thing, here's my developers. I'm like, does this work, people? Like, I feel it's so important. If you're trying to use LinkedIn to do some networking, the best thing is to, again, think about it like a lunch line at a conference, right? Take a look and get interested in what they're interested in. If it's a CEO you're reaching out to, they're probably in different they've posted blogs or they have different interests. And you can just simply say, we share a couple of common interests. I'd love to connect with you here. And then if they choose to connect with you, then it's about, just creating a connection that's about them. And if there is an opportunity, it will naturally surface. Versus I see these people like really pushing and digging. And I think, gosh, does that work for them? Because I know I just send those people right to spam.
I agree, absolutely. So, Anne, how is Canopy different from other web agencies as far as your services?
Perfect. Yeah, I think support is really our differentiating factor. We're really good at taking somebody else's code and making it better. We're really good at taking somebody else's website that's working and making it thrive. And we do that again through our support services, which is much more than plugin updates and module updates. It's really taking on project-based work in small bites. So it's kind of saying, okay, this quarter, we really want to improve our qualified leads. We're getting 100 leads a month, but only 10 of them are qualified. We would rather get, but we're having to qualify all 100 of them. We would rather get 20 leads and having those 10 of them being qualified. So that's what we'll do is we'll kind of tackle that one problem and look at their content strategy, look at their flows, look at how people are clicking through things and where they're getting stuck. I love that you said that you like the story brand approach, because we do feel that's a big transformation for people that want to create a really solid web presence. It's kind of flipping the story from, hey, I'm a company, I'm doing these things, look how great I am, here's this, to putting the user as part of the story and making them the hero and making your company the guide. And we find that ever since we've adopted StoryBrand into our agency practice, we've been able to really take client websites and transform them not only into marketing machines, but also into a really effective tool for building community, for getting more talent, and just creating clarity in the marketplace with that, certain companies' positioning. I love that you're into the StoryBrand because I feel like that's just so powerful.
Yes, it is. And clients always want to know what you've done with other companies or organizations like theirs so that they can picture what you might do with their project or their campaign.
Exactly.
So, Anne, I want to know, how did you build a community around your brand?
Deliberately. I have to say that we are very values driven. So we've got 7 core values, and one of them is contributing to our community. We work in open source, which is just a whole bunch of people around the world that are contributing code back that we can all leverage. So we believe that it's really important for us to contribute back to our community. So we have a full-time dedicated community liaison. So Amy June goes out to the community and evangelizes not only the open source world, our work in accessibility, as well as, Canopy on the general. So we find that as we continue to support our community events, it in turn supports our brand. So we felt like it was so important during the whole, as Black Lives Matter has come to the top, that in all of our presentations, we give time and we give pause to really, recognize the movement that's going on and start to also evangelize social issues within our community platform, which we find so important.
Well, I love that you call her a community evangelist, because just that word evokes enthusiasm and passion. And I'm sure that your team members just love being part of something that's greater than themselves.
It's true. I'm a big fan of the Simon Sinek book, Start With Why. And I felt that was really powerful in terms of how, when we first started the business, of course, we were just like, oh my goodness, we got to get clients, we got to get staff. And now that we're in kind of our 7th year, we're really working to create impact and work with mission-driven clients so we can really further their mission with their website as effectively as possible.
Well, it's so true that a website is a true reflection of the brand. And I've been working with a client lately who has a really, really outdated website, and it's an older gentleman. And I've been trying to explain how, I only have to look at his site for about 2 seconds. And immediately I just have this impression of this sort of tired old company that hasn't really been taken care of. So as you said, once you launch a site, the fact that you take care of it, it's kind of like having a new home that you tend to, and you keep it clean and you keep it organized and you keep it looking nice. And Google really can tell whether you care about your site too, because Google is not going to send people to a site that isn't taken care of and isn't updated and kept orderly and organized, don't you think?
100%. I always use that analogy. It's like a website should last you 10 years. A house should last you 100 years. So if you think about that same kind of time frame, like you said, if you never touch the roof, if a sink gets clogged and you never deal with it, or if an appliance breaks down, but there's also something to improving the house or the website as you go, not just doing, reactive maintenance. If you reimagine your kitchen or re-landscape the front of your house, you're going to add value to your house and make it last a really long time. So same with your website. Once it goes live, 3 months later is a wonderful time to do some data collection and some analysis. So there's a bunch of tools that you can use. Hotjar is one of them that allows you to see, heat maps, and that's where people don't click or think they're supposed to click, as well as Google Analytics. And measuring, those things is super important, as well as, like you said, staying up with the trends. So Google is very savvy, and, there's new things that have come out over the last 2 years that are really important to pay attention to. Structured content will get you indexed higher than if you just have regular content. And what that means is kind of, when you're searching for a recipe and the recipes come up at the top and they're already kind of preloaded in Google with images.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do for your site. So if you're offering a product or you're offering, something that sadly, Google doesn't want you to leave Google. But the intention here is that you want to get up onto those listings by structuring your content appropriately so that the bots can kind of crawl and put it in that right spot. So there's things you can do now from structured data standpoint, or even stuff so that when you share it on social media, it looks really tight. So but yeah, that means just a little bit of love, a little bit. I always tell people, especially if they're just starting their business, that even a little bit goes a long way. So I say, like, maybe it's 1 hour a week, maybe it's 2 hours a month, but either way, put some time aside on your calendar to do some intentional work on your website. So you're not always just in the reactive mode, fixing things. You're actually ahead of it and making improvements.
Well, thanks for that good advice. I learned something about structured content from you today, Anne. So I appreciate that. And I'm glad you used the recipe analogy, because I'm constantly looking for recipes online.
Oh, great.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in a few moments with our conversation with Anne from Canopy. But first, I wanted to tell listeners of PR Maven Nation about my book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, available now on Amazon as a paperback or a Kindle edition. And the book is essentially about how growing your network, both in person and online, is the key to growing a successful brand that will last for a long time and that will serve your life and serve your company or organization. So we're going to give a free Kindle edition away of the book if you go to prmaven.com/giveaway. And we'll be back in just a moment with more from Anne, founder and CEO of Canopy Studios.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. But you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool. A message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
Welcome back. And today we're talking with Anne Stefanyk, founder and CEO of Canopy Studios. And I'm going to dive right back in with more questions. Anne, can you tell me what is the how and why of your website support?
Okay. So I think a lot of it, first off, comes to how we do it is through small bites equals big wins. So what we do at the beginning of our engagement is we sit down and we do an onboarding period where we take a look at everything. We talk to all the stakeholders. We look at your asks of what you want to do. And then we also want to blue sky a little bit to say, where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 3 years, a year? And then work out a plan from there. Then we go into the actual engagement where we decide to tackle one problem at a time and really get that functioning and live so that we believe that we can, get code out and get design out as fast as possible so that that really creates impact. And really the why for all of this is to help people's websites thrive. I think a lot of folks, they'll get this big budget for a big website and they'll launch it and then they'll just leave it there and then they'll think, oh gosh, 3 years have gone by. I need to go and spend all that money again. The reality is that if you do that little kind of what we call continuous website improvement, kind of always just taking care of it, it will continue to grow and grow and grow. And we see some of our clients that when they first come to us, they're often stressed out. They're often overwhelmed. They have too much on their plate. They're frustrated that they can never get anything done on their website fast enough. Their developer has maybe misinterpreted their vision and it's now messy. They can't edit it. So we kind of triage it and make sure that the basics are taken care of. And then we get into, our third quarter or our fourth quarter, or maybe our second or third year. That's when we're really like stretching and pushing boundaries to make the web a real and more impactful space for them. Like, for example, some of our nonprofit clients, once we get past that hurdle and we've shown impact, so we can say, hey, we've doubled donations over the last 2 quarters. All of a sudden, the website is no longer an expense. It's an investment. And people are seeing on the board or in the management team that are like, wow, our 10K turned into 100K or our 100K turned into $1 million. So they start to see the value of doing immediate, impactful items while still taking a bigger picture on the strategy. So that's kind of our why and how. It's really focused on that continuous improvement and really focused on, client success and what does that look like to them.
Well, I've also become a big fan of content marketing, and there's no better place to showcase your content than on your website. I know that I've been doing, well, of course, I have this podcast, the PR Maven podcast, but with every episode, we also create blogs and infographics, and we share those on our website. So I love the idea of using content to engage your audience and to build your network. So that kind of ties back in with the book that I wrote at the beginning of COVID about grow your audience, grow your brand. And of course, your website should be kind of a repository to showcase all of the good work that you're doing and how you're serving your customers and clients.
100%. That's the biggest area that most people don't realize, that they can make a strong impact with their website by just focusing on their content strategy. They don't actually need a bunch of new fancy widgets or a chat button or, a bunch of, expensive activities. A lot of times it's really taking a look at your content strategy, putting your customer at the center and showing them solving their problems with you as the guide. Big fan of content is something that also Google loves. Google loves when you have a website that's producing relevant, good, timely content. It helps you with your search engine rankings, and it also helps with your domain authority so that, as a user, when I'm searching for somebody, I can look at your website and see all of this like proof that you are a professional, that you know what you're doing. It's a big difference when I go to a physiotherapist and I look on their website and it's just about them with very little content versus a physiotherapist that has all their Google reviews kind of pulled into their website. They've got client testimonials saying, wow, I couldn't believe how quickly I got out of my cast, whatever their comments are. That really builds trust so I can move forward. So content is so, so, so important. I think people think, oh, I got to get a widget or I've got to do something technical. But sometimes it's just as basic as getting onto your blog once a month or, starting a podcast.
Right. And that's what I call authority marketing also. So building your authority, which in turn builds what you're calling domain authority, which is really how Google and other search engines determine whether they should send people or send searchers to your site or to another site. So it all ties in, and it is very exciting for me because I started in my business before the advent of the commercial internet. So, I learned how to network face to face. And then I felt like once we got social media, of course, we could have networking on steroids and be networking around the clock.
Yeah.
And I am sometimes guilty of getting on my phone in the middle of the night if I can't sleep. And that's when I'm checking out Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. So anyway, but that's sometimes a problem too. But speaking of social media, though, I do think that Google now takes into consideration how active you are on social media. So it's not only how active you are on your own website, but I think Google wants to see that you are engaged in other places online and that, you have a lot of authoritative links back to your site. Isn't that right?
Yes and no. It's just changed recently. So it was important, but then Google changed the rules and said, we don't really care so much. So this is, again, the reason why you've got to kind of pay attention to this monstrosity that is Google, and then also be mindful of how much time you spend on social, because yes, it is impactful, but is it driving the opportunities that you want or the conversations that you want? I feel a lot of people get lost in spending tons and tons of time per week on Twitter, on Facebook, on social. And I always ask them, what is the value? What is the return on your time? Are you getting what you need out of that? Or is it just busy work that's preventing you from doing the really important stuff? So often it is, does your social post have the right markup so that it's easily shown in Twitter and so forth? And does it link back to your website? And so I think that, yes, 100% you want to have a social presence. You just want to balance that with, people are busy and you're probably busy. So figuring out what's the best spend of your time. Because Google, yes, does like it, but they've just recently changed some of their algorithms. So it's not as important. So don't stress out if you can only get to a couple of tweets a week. That's probably enough. You don't need to tweet 7 times a day to be effective. You can just tweet here and there and still have the same impact.
And the other important thing, I think, is that all that time you're spending on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook is adding to their value, and you don't own that content. Facebook owns the content, or Twitter does, or LinkedIn. So you do make a very good case, Anne, for spending time on your own site, because that is real estate that you do own.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with scheduling a bunch of tweets or social posts, but ultimately the driver should, what is the purpose of this content and where does it fit in the customer journey? So how does it support the customer journey? We really like with LinkedIn, for example, we meet a new client. I like to connect with them on LinkedIn, get to know them a little bit more in a different space. And then what happens is then as I produce content, I will post it on my LinkedIn, and they might like my piece of content, and then it gives me something to talk about with them. Oh, hi, Mary. I'm so glad we had that great meeting. I noticed that you really liked my post about accessible media. Are you doing more stuff with making your social posts more accessible? And then we can have a conversation about it. So I feel that's a great way to leverage social posts is if you have a certain person you're working with and they're very active looking at your social stuff, it gives you kind of stuff to talk about. It's kind of like if you were sitting at the lunch table and someone's, oh, what magazine are you reading, right? And it gives you, again, something to talk about.
Well, it must be lunchtime where you are because you've talked a lot about lunch, Anne. But I agree.
True.
I agree. And I actually really miss business lunches now that we're in COVID days. So I hope that the world can open up again so we can do more business lunches. So, Anne, what do you do to promote your own personal brand?
Well, I feel like I'm fairly visible in quite a few places. I frequently speak at conferences and I volunteer quite a bit. And I also write on our blog, and I do a bit of podcast outreach on podcasts like yours. I found just doing a little bit of outreach and getting onto podcasts has been really strong for, connecting with other people and kind of promoting my personal brand as well as our company's brand.
What kind of causes do you volunteer for?
A lot of them are in open source as well as helping female entrepreneurs thrive. So I do a lot of mentorship with female entrepreneurs that are either just starting. I have a lot of women that I work with that have a lot of imposter syndrome, and just really helping them understand that they can be the best they can be. And, perfectionism is the enemy of good. So that's usually where I spend most of my time in doing volunteering.
Nice. That's really great. I think that's very important. And imposter syndrome is a real thing. Took me about 40 years to figure that out.
Especially in tech. I notice a lot of females have this imposter syndrome, and a lot of males too. I won't be just gender specific, but I know that the imposter thing is oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. And I'm kind of whispering to them, nobody else does too. It's okay. We'll just fake it till we make it, because as you learn, you grow so quickly. And it takes, taking that first step of being oh, I'm a little nervous, but taking that first step is already giving you the confidence and the skill set to move forward to the next step.
Well, yeah, technology is evolving so rapidly that really nobody knows everything. So I think, everybody brings their own superpower or their own unique skills to the table. And that's why open source is important, right? Because everybody collaborates around the world to try to make a better product.
Exactly.
Anne, is there a book or an app? You've already mentioned a couple of books, but is there a book, an app, or a website that you have found helpful in your career, and why?
Well, first off, as a busy CEO, I find that my morning time is very precious. So I spend a lot of time with Audible or my podcast apps. I love using Audible and podcasts as a way to learn early in the morning before the world kind of wakes up. I'm also a big fan of using apps for meditation. I love Simple Habit. It's the same as Calm, but it's an app that kind of guides you through meditation. And for books, oh gosh, I love books. And I find that one of the first books that it really changed my business is called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. It's a very basic concept, kind of the Oprah pay yourself first methodology for your business. And that number, just transformed our business by doing a profit first accounting model. So I love that. And I also love Story Brand by Donald Miller, as you mentioned. Another great set of books to, if you really are focusing on transforming, taking the online and the offline and kind of merging traditional with online, is a book called Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman, and a book called Giftology by John Ruhlin. Both of those books really take a look at the customer journey and how you can support their journey and kind of help feel that human connection so that you can make sure that you retain those clients. Because it's way, way more effective to retain clients than always having to go and find new ones. And I found those two books specifically gave a good roadmap and a toolbox to implement gifting for my staff and for my clients, as well as create a really solid customer journey with different check-in points so we could make sure that they're always happy, or fix it real quickly if they're not.
Well, I appreciate those suggestions. I know of Profit First, certainly, and Story Brand, but Never Lose a Customer Again, I have not heard of. And I have heard of Giftology, but I have not read that one. So I, too, am a big fan of Audible, and I will download those on my Audible because I use that while I'm walking. So I also like to get up early in the morning exercise and listen to podcasts or books at the same time. Multitasking is a great way to go for exercising and learning.
Yeah, exactly. And I found with COVID, it's so important right now to make time to do some self-care and to do some things, especially as probably as a busy female, as a mom, as, an entrepreneur. Carving out 20 minutes for yourself, even if it's painful to get up a little bit earlier, gives you such a great start for the day and really makes you feel like you've taken care of you. Because you got to, what they say on the airplanes, you got to put on your own mask before you put on anybody else's. It's so true about life. And I think sometimes as a busy female entrepreneur, we kind of put ourselves last, and that doesn't actually help anybody. So if there is an opportunity for carve out 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even if it means hiding in the bathroom away from your kids for 5 minutes, anything you can do to kind of create some space for your own learning and for your own, professional development, even if it's just a bite size, really helps you kind of set yourself out on a good foot for the day.
I agree. Absolutely. And my kids are grown up. They're in their 20s now. So luckily I don't have to, I do enjoy talking with them, but I don't have to worry about them electrocuting themselves or getting in trouble while I'm hiding in the bathroom.
Exactly.
So, Anne, I've really enjoyed this conversation. If others want to follow up and get in touch with you, what is the best way?
Of course. Probably the easiest way is actually to find me through LinkedIn. You can just Google Anne Canopy, that's Kanopi, LinkedIn, and I'll come up right away. You can find me. And then just mention when you do your little LinkedIn request where you heard about me from. I'm always open to working with other female entrepreneurs and kind of collaborating with them. So definitely reach out. Or you can find us on our website at Canopy with a K. So it's Kanopi.com. And if you want to email me directly, it's Anne with an E at Canopy with Kanopi.com. So yeah, that's probably the best way.
Well, great. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that we can meet in person someday when all of this COVID is behind us.
So true. So true. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Thank you. And I hope everybody in PR Maven Nation has a great day today. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.